Yeah, it's going down. H-Town, Hiram Clark, B. Scott from Hiram Clark, B. Scott from Hiram.
All right, it is the B Block Podcast. Welcome in. I am your host, Brandon Scott. Appreciate you for being here. Go ahead and hit that subscribe, hit that like if you haven't already. Would appreciate it if you did that. You can also subscribe to the B Block Podcast wherever it is that you get your audio podcast as well. We've had a lot of weird activity happen over the last week or so. We have not talked since the KD files dropped over the weekend during All-Star weekend, no less. We have not talked since these odd CJ Stroud trade rumor. I don't even know if I can dignify them enough to call them rumors, but like the trade chatter that's out there, kind of conversation that's been created, and then the weird behavior that's more from that. I got my guy, one of my mentors, John McClain, out there threatening the Houston public with running down or walking down Kirby naked if it were to happen, which I just don't love that, for the simple fact that the last time that John McClain made an outrageous claim like that, or bet that type of bet, hey, this won't happen or I'll do this, the quarterback actually got traded. So that was weird behavior. And then the extreme that we went to, we got to touch on that subject just a little bit. And then, of course, we haven't talked since all of the Astros appeared at spring training. And I got some thoughts about, and I shared some of this already on the radio. I did In the Loop on Tuesday with Reginald Atatula, and we talked a little bit about this Yordan out in left field and sort of the infield conundrum that they have, especially since the Isaac Paredes trade talks have died down or at least stalled to some degree. So we'll get into all of that, but we got to start with the KD files, because for one thing, I've noticed like this odd, weird energy from Rockets fans, like, and I haven't gotten it. I don't know if this means that I've got a certain amount of like equity built up with the audience, or if it just means that I don't really have no audience at all. But I haven't gotten nearly the smoke for not like hammering home on the KD files over the last several days, the way a lot of people in media have. But certain folks with Rockets ties have kind of stayed away from it a little bit, because it's odd, it's strange, it's weird, it's out of nowhere. Is difficult to verify without certain like cyber skills, and it's awkward and weird, right? And so you haven't seen, I don't think you've seen nearly enough, or let me change that. I don't think you've seen nearly as much local commentary on this subject as probably the appetite would set out for, or would tell you. But I've kind of just observed this thing, and I think we talked about it a little bit In the Loop a couple of days ago. We didn't talk about it on the drive on Wednesday, but that's because there's just so much going on with the team, so much actual like substantive type of stuff that's going on with the Rockets to talk about, that this out of nowhere thing is just weird. If you look at the thumbnail on this video, you'll see where I called it weird behavior. Everything about this story is weird, but I will give you my reaction to it, and it's this. And of course, this is with kind of feeling like I got a bit more of an informed opinion based off of how this has been, what the response has been to this publicly from the people who matter in all of this. And so I'll say this. The KD files, while I do think a lot of the substance of it is nonsense, as Kevin Durant referred to it on Wednesday when he first talked about this at the shoot-around. While I do agree that it's nonsense, it does appear to actually be him. Like it's hard to watch how this thing has been responded to and not think that the lack of a denial is not a statement in and of itself, or something where you can kind of read between the lines. It's ironic, actually, where KD was talking about reading between the lines when Michael Shapiro at Crime.com asked him about the effort from the old guys in the All-Star game, and it was that viral clip of him talking about, man, check out the European players, check out the international players, and the effort that they give before you come talking to the old school American players. They the ones that don't get the effort, right? So he mentioned something about reading between the lines there, right? If you read between the lines of how this whole thing is played out, this appears to actually be Katie. This is the question over the last several days. Do you think it's really him? That's kind of the safe way to play it is it him? Is it not? Oh, let's just sit and wait. Let's see and see. Let's see what they say. Let's see how it plays out. It appears to be him. And I don't really feel nervous about saying that anymore, between the lack of denial and how activity went dark on the main account as well. I don't know how else you would actually explain that. So I'm leaning more likely than not that is him. I know in the morning show they did this. Sean and Seth on 610 did, oh, what if we give them the civil trial standard, 51%, more likely than not. Where are you leaning? I'm leaning on the more likely than not side. So that's number one on the KD files. But also, there is some funny shit in here. I gotta admit. There's some funny shit in here. Cannot deny that. A lot of it is inappropriately funny, and it's the type of stuff that you laugh at, but you're not really supposed to be laughing at. But it's funny nonetheless. So whoever this is, whether it is Katie or not, and again to be clear, I do think it is. But whether it's him or not, this is a legit funny person. Like there was something about some of the inappropriate jokes in here that, like, reading them, and I think there's that element to it of like, man, this is funny because, uh, yeah, now the drone stuff isn't. Yeah, yeah, the drone stuff is, I feel like, is at least something that somebody should talk about and should account for. I don't know what to make of that. Be honest with you, Shingun. I appreciate this. Arthur saying I didn't get the KD file smoke because my audience isn't made of idiots. You know what? I'm gonna let that sit for a minute. Let that sit with me for a minute, because I appreciated it. I didn't feel the pressure to, like, oh man, I got to talk about this. But I don't think I thought about it that way. Of like, man, maybe the small following that I got is a rational enough following to kind of let this thing play out and not lose their mind over the whole thing. I appreciate that, Arthur. It's a nice little note. I appreciate that. Um, but yeah, I thought it was some funny shit in here. I did. And I didn't want to get, kind of to the point, I didn't want to get too goofy about it, you know, because there were jokes in there that were inappropriate that I thought were funny, but we didn't even know if they were real. So who were we attributing the jokes to, you know? So there is that part of it, that I'm not afraid to admit that I was somewhat entertained by this. Not the drone stuff. Not the drone stuff. I feel like, to Shingun's point, somebody kind of needs to answer for that. Not really sure what's going on there. But I do want to speak on the relationship part, because that's the part that seems like it's important to the conversation. But I want to be honest about it. Like, I don't know what this does for the relationships on the team. Like, that's gonna be for them to decide. I was thinking about this earlier, like in sports, and I've been around this team just enough to know, like, there is a lot of ball busting that goes on in these type of work environments that just don't hit the same and are not as common in normal work environments for the rest of us. Even for the rest of us that have loose enough type of relationships with our coworkers where we can make inappropriate jokes and say stuff about each other, and it can kind of fly because we got that type of relationship. Like, it's not quite the same as it is in sports. And I can just think about Kevin Durant talking about one of the one of the things that he really loves about being on this team is this college field, because everybody's so young and everybody's learning and hungry and all this kind of stuff. And so like he juxtaposed that to the environment he was in Phoenix. He really likes the college environment. That can be an immature and like a ball busting type of environment. I can see that. I can see that. So I'm not entirely sure if they're close enough to make those types of jokes with each other. If it crosses a line, or if it crosses a line at all, to make those jokes outside the group within another group. If it crosses another line for those jokes to then become public even beyond that for the whole world to see. And so now we're not just ball busting, but now we putting each other on blast and calling each other, you know, slurs, mentally challenged slurs. I don't even know what the right way to frame that phrase, that the word that we don't use anymore, the R word. But like now we calling each other that out in public, perhaps outside of context, perhaps without a proper understanding of the relationship, what we're referring to. Like it's just I don't know what it does for that, but they get to decide. You know, they get to decide how they want to play it, or how awkward it makes things. It's not really for me to. What I'm saying is I'm not gonna be offended on somebody else's behalf on this particular thing. Those relationships that I don't have that the rest of us don't have nothing to do with, and if they can make it work, they can make it work. But it is weird behavior. It is weird behavior. And honestly, if I'm just being blunt about it, as much as I like Kevin Durant, as much of a joy as it is to watch him play basketball night in and night out, and I'm not one of these people that like regrets the trade and thinks they shouldn't have done it and all of that. I was for the trade at the time. I think it's worked out. I think he's been incredible for the most part. But if this is him, and again, said that after the last couple of days, based off of the public reaction, that I'm leaning more likely than not that it is him. And if in fact it is, this is like as funny as it is, as some of the stuff is, I just don't get blowing your cover on a burner. I get maybe that you might want to say stuff that you can't really say, and even in some cases, you want the people that you're saying it to, but being this thirsty for attention at this big age is sad to me. Even if we're not talking about like an all-time great, like it doesn't have to be Kevin Durant. He just happens to be the one in the spot about. But like anybody, like, and I know he's differently situated, uniquely situated in this case because how many Kevin Durants are there? But man, Shingun says I'm lagging. Something happened with my connection. I'm saying that it's lame. Funny as it is. Like it's, you know, goofy as I got in about some of the jokes. Thought it was lame. Being this thirsty for attention at this age, kind of to me is sad. Man, and I don't want to be like super judgy. Got people in this chat, right, that I'm interacting with that I haven't met in person and I don't know if I ever will. But I'm not doing it on a burner. Like I'm saying, you know what I mean? Like to me, the whole purpose of the burner is to not reveal yourself. And he in here blowing his cover. Just don't get that part. Yeah, and Shingun mentions the part about all of that while being in the group with his stands. There's some, not to like diagnose them or anything or be too psychoanalyzing it and everything, but it does feel like there's some like insecurity type of stuff going on there. Needing that reassurance, that affirmation from somebody, and feeling like it's a safe space. Turned out it wasn't. It ain't. If it's him. Wayne Virgin says he lives in Sweden, so we probably shout out to you for watching all the way in Sweden. I appreciate that. Appreciate that a lot. Now, if we want to talk about the team and some of the things that I think are important for the Rockets post All-Star break, I think this part is important too, not to just talk about the kind of the juicy stuff, the headlines, but the actual basketball part. I do want to see them come up with some type of offensive identity in the half court outside of simply giving the ball to Kevin Durant or Alperen Sengun. And when they do that, and I think they've done a better job as of late, haven't been as consistent, and that's the part that I guess I'm really asking for. But moving without the basketball when either one of those two guys has the ball, and just having a better feel for how to play off of those guys, if that is going to be the focal point. That's how they want to start their games out, right? They want to get KD involved early. They want to get, in some cases, Alperen Sengun involved early. But what do they have? What are their counters like when either of those guys are double teamed? What do they feel like they can go to avoid double teams for those guys and to get them easier shots? What do they feel like they can go to? Or to get everyone easier shots outside of like trying to fight through double teams? What can they go to? This is what I'm hoping to see, or what I'm at the very least curious to see, is what are the offensive adjustments? What, now that they've had time off to kind of really reflect and look at what worked and what didn't, what do they see? And they do have some conflicts. I don't want to make it seem like it's just easy as anything to figure out. But it does, to me, seem like a very clear route to go, even with the negatives that come with it, right? And so what I'm talking about, the end of that last Clippers game where Reed Shepherd, I think, might have played 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, if that. I don't know. He definitely wasn't in at the end when they needed a three. And I feel like he didn't play much that quarter at all after having an incredible first half. What's the reason for that? You feel like he wasn't holding up defensively? I don't feel like that's a good enough excuse at this point, especially for how the offense started to do the thing that it does in that second half, where it just goes cold and everything starts to fall flat. They've got to find something beyond the obvious. The Texans had this problem at one point. I made the point about them that and maybe it's actually a little different, because for them it was when it wasn't as obvious, right? Like when it was like they benefited early on from the element of surprise, getting their work done on early downs. When Davis Mills got in there, they were working real well on early downs because, hey, you got the playbook, got more to playbook at your disposal, right? Well, I guess similar with the Rockets when they like, and when they didn't, when they didn't have more of their playbook at their disposal, it became a problem when they didn't have the element of surprise. But when the Rockets, when they try to solve you, double KD, double Sengun, put a center on a man, an agile center on a man who can now roam and give us elite help defense on a team that likes to do a lot of one-on-one type of action, ISOs and post-ups and whatnot. What do you have beyond that? And the conflict I was talking about, this was pointed out. I want to say Ben DeBose was one who did it before I did, but it is worth mentioning, and it's obvious when you watch the Rockets, that they do have a fit issue that they need to sort out. And I don't think it's one that they can't solve at all, but it does require some coaching and some strategy. But they got a conundrum here where there's three three young players that need to be on the floor down the stretch. And Alperen Sengun, Amin Thompson, and I believe Reed Shepard. All three of these guys need to be on the floor down the stretch. And the issue is on one end of the floor, you've got Reed Shepard and Alperen Sengun, who are both potential liabilities on defense. I think depending on the matchup, depending on the night, and for various reasons. So, how viable is it to have those two on the floor at critical moments from a defensive standpoint? Is a serious question, especially considering Alperen Sengun has taken a bit of a step back defensively in ways that I would say are honestly disappointing. If he's playing the defense that he played the last couple of years, I don't think that this part is even an issue. This isn't even something to bring up. But here we are. And then on the offensive end of the floor, remind you, Reed Shepard, young player, still gaining experience, still getting his confidence, still figuring things out at a critical position where he handles the ball. But with Sengun and Amin Thompson, you don't have the floor spacing. The floor spacing is clunky. You kind of gotta it's hard to have any kind of two-man game between the two of them because neither of them is a knockdown shooter. And again, just the spacing is an issue. And if they deploy the strategy of let's put an agile center on Amin Thompson, and we feel like we can guard Sengun with like a strong wing, and that works, man, a playoff team is going to be good enough to actually do that. At least in stretches. They got to be able to counter these things. Honestly, it all comes down to me. I think the players have actually been pretty good, not consistent enough. But making all of this fit happen to me comes down to coaching. So the ones that I'm looking at, KD files aside, the ones that I'm looking at, starting with this game tonight against Charlotte, but throughout the post All-Star break, it starts with Ime Udoka, and then it's Alperen Sengun. And then for me, it's the rest of the young guys. In some order, Amin Thompson, Reed Shepard, and I'd probably put Reed up there higher, but that's more of a as much of a Udoka thing as it is a Reed thing, right? I want to see how Udoka uses them, and I want to see how Reed plays. Then, of course, Amin, who has been good, really, really good, but the offense or feeling like that there's something there that perhaps you could run an offense through at some point. Like I was much more optimistic about that a year ago than I am now. That hey, eventually he might not ever be like, this guy's not going to be Dame Lillard. And maybe he's not even like, he's not going to be Kawhi Leonard per se, but he's going to find a bag. He's going to find a pocket somewhere where he can operate. And that hasn't really, I've said this before, that it's a credit to how incredible he actually is that he can be as successful as he's been with really no shot at all. At all. Fair point here from Wing Version about Alperen Sengun being a little bit worse on defense because you want him to ISO on top, run the offensive rebound. He can't do it all. I agree. He can't do it all. That's why I want to see more Reed Shepard. Right? Like I'm not putting it all on Sengun. Some of it now. Because some of this is effort issue, and I think he could at times give a better effort. But I do agree about the not having him do it all part. And I think the solution to that is something that they've been, it seems like, hesitant to go to or really lean into. but also acknowledging that it presents some conflicts defensively going to it. So I think this is a decent point, but there are ways I think to mitigate this, to combat this. Don't have them running all these damn ISOs and running the offense all the damn time. I guess the disappointment for me is that I thought that there was enough to work with. I thought that there was enough to work with for the Rockets to not have to overly rely on any one body, especially Kevin Durant at his age and with his mileage. But even Alperen Şengün, with how important he is on both ends of the floor, and that heightened once Steven Adams got injured. So it's my Rocket spill. Let's move on to some Texan stuff, because in the spirit of the weird behavior, I gotta hit on these confusing trade rumors? Question mark. I should have put a question mark here in the Chiron, but like, what are we doing here? What are we doing with the trade stuff? I saw that it was out there. I don't really follow all of these programs that closely to be. No, I know a lot. It's kind of the thing you're supposed to follow everything that everybody does. I don't. I just don't have time to follow everything that everybody does. But I have seen, because it's been reacted to, the CJ Stroud stuff out there. I think Todd McShay has like hinted toward it, and I don't think he would know per se, but he could. But it's just like chatter, just like what we're doing right here now. Just like, what do you think? And then was it Albert Breer who kind of hinted at it, but also said don't aggregate this because like I'm not reporting anything. So, should we not aggregate it? Should we not have a conversation? Where is this coming from? And here's my thing. I just don't know who it makes sense for right now. Like the whole change of scenery part and all of that. Like you can create a narrative, but I don't know who this would make sense for. Like think about it. What would be the impetus for the CJ Stroud trade? Like you're a team that doesn't have a quarterback and you're willing to take a swing on Stroud with draft picks and you're willing to pay him. Like if you're thinking that he's worth that type of investment, then what makes you think he's available at this age, at this cost, at this stage where the Texans are? Why would he be available? That is strange to me. That is weird. That is confusing to me. Now, that's not to say that he ain't available or that he couldn't be available or there ain't nothing going on that could make him available. I don't know. But that's confusing. Because what it would take to get CJ Stroud, to me, would indicate that he is more worth keeping than getting rid of. And then from the Texan standpoint, you want to start over at quarterback. You've been to the playoffs 3 years in a row and won double-digit games. You still got a quarterback at a decent price. You don't necessarily have to extend them now. You can kind of run this thing back, try to upgrade the team, see if he improves, see what happens. Go ahead and commit to that fifth-year option for sure. But beyond that, like you got options here, or you could extend them if you really believe in the guy. Like you got trading him seems drastic. And I was on here after the poor playoff performance saying they were going to have to do some serious soul searching on the future of the team and how much they actually trust him with the future of the team. But that didn't lead me to trade him. That more so led me to, hey, let's talk this thing out. Maybe we still end up doing the extension. Maybe we wait. But this is still the quarterback in 2026 and probably beyond. I don't get the motivation for the Texans, and I don't get why a team would think the Texans would be even willing to do this at this point, unless there's more to it than just simply my man had a bad game and you know, like you never know until you do know what's underlying. But I don't get it. You know, you're willing to like if you're willing to trade for CJ Stroud, that means you're willing to give up multiple draft picks and probably making a decision about his future pretty soon. Like you gonna trade all those draft picks for a trial run, 1 to 2 year trial run of CJ Stroud, and feel like you can just change your mind. And if it's that sure of a thing to you, the Texans will have to be looking at themselves like, I don't know about this yet. I don't know about this trading this guy. That to me is where folks get way too caught up and enamored with trade compensation, what you can get for a guy. Oh, a bunch of first round picks. Okay, but now you're a team with still a really good and young and capable defense that doesn't have a clear solution at quarterback. To me, the only way, I feel like I've said this before, but the only way that a CJ Stroud trade would make sense are the trades that are like out of this world blockbuster type of deals that again you don't see coming because something else is happening that's kind of beneath the surface. It's not obvious to the naked eye. Right? So like trading CJ Stroud for Joe Burrow. Because Burrow doesn't, let's just make up a scenario here. Burrow doesn't want to be in Cincinnati anymore. And the Texans don't know if they want to pay CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud really wants to be paid, feels disrespected, kind of doesn't want to be here anymore. I'm making this all up. Okay. Then that kind of makes sense because you're trading a star whose time has kind of run its course for a player that isn't necessarily on that level, but is a young, proven, and up and coming player. And obviously, any team that could add Joe Burrow that doesn't have Joe Burrow, I think would be glad to do it. And if the Bengals were to have to give up Joe Burrow, I feel like landing CJ Stroud would be kind of the equivalent to the Lions ended up with Jared Goff. But ain't nobody said nothing about that happening or that's like even in play. That either one of those is agitating in that way. I don't know, or at least unless I just haven't seen it. But I don't have a reason to believe that that's in play. There are others that you could make that comparison with. Maybe Justin Herbert. Okay, Jalen Hurts would be a far fetched idea of that. But like that type of thing, if you were to do that type of thing, I don't see that being out there. You just gonna trade them for picks. That doesn't make sense to me. D Skills H Town, appreciate you for being in the chat. It says, I'm sure the Texans are getting calls, but I think they get calls every season for people they aren't trying to trade. There's probably something to that. We hear about the calls that we hear about, and then the calls that we don't. It's like, it doesn't. These are just for whatever reason stuff that people are talking about. And who knows if the chatter has any link to whatever conversations are actually being had. If there's any conversations being had at all. But just, yeah, to D Skills' point, though, I guess it ain't no harm in making the call. If you're a team that doesn't have a quarterback and is trying to get one quickly and would rather one that you've seen play in the NFL and be successful versus trying to find one, or like draft one. I have made the point that the trade market is going to be the one that could be a lot juicier than free agency and maybe even the draft. Free agent class is man. The draft itself is all right. So the trades that we do see across the league are going to be the ones that I think are going to be the biggest headlines of the offseason in terms of transactions. But speaking of headlines, before I get out of here, I didn't want to take up too much of y'all time. But I don't know if I got any baseball fans in here. I don't know if I do. And I don't want to scare y'all away if you're not, but I root for the Astros. I don't know what you want me to do about it. I'm excited about this season, but I am concerned about the odd fit of everything. Like they got the surplus of infielders that it doesn't seem like they're able to trade, and then they got Yordan back healthy, but they kind of want to bubble wrap him as best they can and just only have him DH. And the juicy part about this was when they all reported this week, the whole team for spring training, Yordan seemed borderline indignant about the idea that he can't play in the outfield or that he needs to be protected or that he's at some kind of great risk of injury. And I found that interesting because I think that over the last couple of years or so now, everybody has just, most of us, I should say, have just kind of become acceptant of the fact that Yordan's going to miss games and that there are health issues and that he's just not the most, as great as he is, great of a hitter as he is, he's not the most durable player and he's not the greatest outfielder. He's okay. You can put him out there, but he ain't great at it. And so why risk injury to have this dude do a thing that he's not even all that great at to begin with? Let's just have him do the thing that he does. As the Rhino says, Yordan is fragile, though. That's the feeling. I mean, it's hard to even argue that given the injury history. But for me, I still think they should put him out there in left field, at least until they figure out a better option for this infield surplus. Because what it does is allows them to get Isak Paredes' bat in the lineup as a DH or as their second baseman and allows Jose Altuve to DH, right? Because for all of this talk about the infield surplus, which is real, it kind of masks the other issue of the DH surplus because that's what they have with Yordan and Jose Altuve. They got two guys that they can't take out of the lineup, but they also don't really feel comfortable putting in the field anywhere. Quiet is kept about them putting Jose Altuve back at second base. They don't want to do it. No more than they really want to put Yordan in the outfield now for different reasons. Not because they're trying to bubble wrap him, but with both of them, they don't really think that the guy is good enough to play the position. And that's a construction issue. We got two DHs. What do? You only get to have one. We got 5 infielders. Only get to have 4. So the math not mathing. I think the easiest fix is to put Yordan out there in left. And you don't have to do it every day, but I think it should be their primary lineup for now. It makes them the best by getting all of the best bats in there. And you kind of just take that risk. I think having him out there in left field is like I don't want to see him colliding with Jeremy Pena. But I don't think that having him out there in left field is necessarily like the death sentence that that we're so quick to kind of assign to it because quote unquote Yordan is fragile. Right. If only Yordan could play left field, we could eliminate an entire spring training dilemma with the Astros and ride this thing out. So that's all I got, man. Y'all let me know what y'all think about all of these topics, man. The KD files, which are utter nonsense, but also comical. The CJ Stroud trade rumors, which are also, I think, utter nonsense. But I didn't mention John McClain again. For the sake of John McClain's word, and I don't know who's gonna hold him accountable to this, like other than maybe Ron the Show Hughley, Sports Radio 610s, because he wants to do the live broadcast, because that's definitely his personality. All right, John, get naked and let's talk about it. But other than that, other than Ron shenanigans, like, for the sake of God, let's not trade this guy. Because damn it, man, we can't have the general going back on his word, and we definitely can't have him keeping his word on this part. I don't know if y'all seen it, but John McClain say he gonna walk down Kirby naked if the Texans trade CJ Stroud. We can't have it. Can't have it, man. D Skill says he missed the KD talk earlier. I said at the top, man, that I think that is him. Now, I don't know how problematic it actually is. Like, I don't want to over dramatize the thing, because it's not for me. Like, I think it's whack, but it's not for me to be all outraged about, because he wasn't talking about me and I don't have to play with him. So, depending on what the relationships actually look like, it don't have to necessarily be a problem. It might be. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But I do think it's lame, and I do think it's him. In a nutshell, was my thoughts. Think it's him, think it's lame, don't think it's got to be the end of the world. And think that they actually got bigger issues, bigger fish to fry, if you will, in terms of like what the team needs. Like the team got more issues of, like, I asked KD about how their process can look better, how their offense can look better. He talked about getting into their actions earlier, not waiting until so late in the shot clock to allow things to develop and allow defenses to really feast on them. Of course, some of the obvious adjustments that other teams have made against them are ones that they gotta account for, right? Can't be letting teams take Amin Thompson out of the game by throwing a center on them. Alperen Sengun, I've said this in other places, I should say it here before I get out. Alperen Sengun flat out has to just be better. And he's been fine at times, but he's got to be closer to what he was at the beginning of the year. And we had Wing version, mention that, hey, they can't have him doing it all and expect him to hold up. But, I mean, he's supposed to be, this two-time All-Star. It was an All-NBA type of level he was playing at early in the year. We got to start holding him to a certain standard. So I think that's important. I think that's important, that guys really start stepping up in their roles. And in the case of Reed Shepherd, an increased role. I think that's important. Going to be an uncomfortable locker room for a while. And this is what I'm saying. Like, how much ball busting is there? I talked earlier, you missed these skills, but, I hit on how KD likes the college environment of this team. I guess it kind of either reminds him of OKC a little bit, or maybe reminds him of his college days at Texas. But with everybody being so young, it's just everything feels kind of light around there. Do they already talk like this anyway? And is all they got to get over is, man, you let that get out? You saying that to other people about me? Man, yeah, that was fucked up. I shouldn't have did that. But you my boy, man. I told you I think you a R word before. for not knowing the plays or whatever it is. I didn't yell at Şengün before about not playing defense, and I think this, that, and the third. Like, the uncomfortable part to me is just how lame it is, and I hate to keep calling it that because I respect KD, especially as a ball player and even as a dude. Like, just having like my minimal interactions with dude, seems like a good dude, to be honest with you. So I don't take no joy in being like, man, this shit is lame, but the shit is lame, if it's him. But also I thought funny, lame to do, lame for doing it, but he gets at least a B plus or an A for content. Some funny shit in there. Really is. All right, man. That's it. Y'all subscribe to the B Block Podcast if y'all not already doing that. Go ahead and like this video. Go ahead and leave your thoughts right here in the comments. Would much appreciate that, man. We'll try to do this another Rockets play tonight. It's the Hornets. So, the last time they did that, it didn't look good. So I'm hoping it looks a lot better. But I gotta say, man, whenever I watch the Hornets, they are a fun team and a tough out. So we'll see what the Rockets got here coming off the All-Star break. Appreciate everybody for joining in into the chat. B Scott here, B Block Podcast. And until next time, man, y'all be good.